Hey everyone. So, please let me apologize for not having a video up in a year, maybe two, year and a half. Really, I'm so sorry. See, it's just that the only room I'm able to record this stuff in is in the center of everything in my house, and ever since I got a full-time job, it's been next to impossible trying to record my voice for these things since I'm never home at a time where no one else is. So, it's just really, really tough compared to how it used to be. But, you know, with Xenoverse 2 coming out now, it gave me the final push I need to finally get back to this. Because I know I never finished Xenoverse 1, and that's really inexcusable. That's not gonna happen this time. This time will be different, and I have a whole new story and character for this sequel. If you want to hear about that story now, rather than how it worked with Blitzar, because with Blitzar I made the mistake of making the story unfold with the timeline, which left all the viewers confused until the answers were revealed. So this time, I've decided to give it to you guys straight up, and you can follow it along with me as we enter the timeline and let the story unfold together. So, without further ado, here is my original backstory for my brand new character. I hope you guys enjoy it. Brussel's personality is that of a bright and upstanding young man. However, this kind of demeanor doesn't get you very far in a race of proud and fierce warriors. Despite his above-average level of strength, Brussel was always looked down upon by his comrades, and considered as a low-class warrior. Compassion was a rarity among Saiyans, and those foolish enough to display it were in for a rough time. But even amid all the hazing, Brussel still managed to find a team who thought like he did. Brussel's Saiyan allies, Tsukino, Mizuna, and Parsa, appreciated his sunny optimism, and enjoyed the change of pace. It was nice to not have to treat each other like dirt all the time, and get treated like garbage yourself. It was almost like there wasn't a mean bone in Brussel's body. Despite this virtuous mentality, however, Brussel did have something in common with all the other pure-blooded Saiyans. He loved to fight, and challenged himself to reach new heights every day of his life. He got the job done as a Saiyan warrior, and helped conquer planets for the World Trade Organization. But unlike most Saiyans, he made sure to do so with as few casualties as possible. To add to Brussel's negative reputation among Saiyans, it's rumored that he has never once consciously killed another living being. While only Brussel truly knows if this audacious claim holds any truth to it, there is another rumor floating around that is absolutely true. He has never assumed his Great Ape form before. Brussel has seen firsthand what the loss of control does to the mind and body of a Saiyan who transforms, and refuses to recklessly kill anything that moves. Ever the stubborn strategist, he's been able to avoid eye contact with the full moon and has learned to ignore the powerful sensations it brings when he sees it from the corner of his eye. Brussel's allies even know that if he were to accept his Great Ape form and fought to kill, the potential he holds would earn him a much higher ranking amongst his peers. But Brussel won't sacrifice his morals for peer pressure. He lives to fight, but also to enjoy the ride along the way. And he'll be damned if he ever allows his Saiyan heritage to turn him into a cold-blooded killer. One day, Brussel and his allies were playing a sort of combination between sparring and tag, a popular Saiyan sport, when a large saucer-shaped spacecraft hovered overhead. Lord Frieza was overseeing the planet with Dodoria and Zarbon by his side, but something much more sinister was brewing as well. Bardock was wise to Frieza's heartless scheme, and fought tooth and nail through countless Frieza soldiers to bring down the tyrant once and for all. Brussel and his allies witnessed the skirmish going on above Planet Vegeta, but only saw a faint silhouette going up against hundreds of other warriors. It was an awesome sight to be sure, but rapt attention transformed into paralyzing terror as an orange light began to grow in size, expanding to the point that it could easily be mistaken for the sun itself. No one was prepared. Before anyone could react, that colossal ball of fire descended upon Planet Vegeta. The warrior above was consumed by its overwhelming power, and the skies began to burn as huge buildings were incinerated before their very eyes. Blessed with good fortune, the team was near a station housing Saiyan space pods, but cruel fate would ensure that there would only be 3 available. Never one to put himself before others, Brussol rushed to the space pods with the others in tow and shoved one inside each pod, leaving himself as the odd man out. With all 3 pods already preset for the same coordinates, Brussol screamed at them to just go! And with heavy hearts, they knew that it was a means of survival. The Saiyan pods departed and flew off in the same direction away from Planet Vegeta, leaving Brussol to get caught in the tremendous blast of Frieza's supernova. Brussol was no more. But this wasn't the end of the remarkable young hero's story. Brussol made it to Otherworld, and taking into account his sensible and compassionate nature, had surely earned himself a spot in heaven. But King Yemma was astonished when he discovered that a pure-blooded Saiyan had deliberately sacrificed his own life just to save a few others. Under the commendable circumstances, King Yemma offered Brussol one more chance at life, knowing he would be sure not to waste it. Brussol accepted with extraordinary gratitude, and was resurrected on a remote planet with his body restored. Brussol could hardly believe what just happened, but needed to get back to focusing on the bigger picture. His next mission? Track down Tsukino, Mizuna, and Parsa. Fortunately, Brussol's photographic memory helped him recall what coordinates were put into one of the 3 pods. As long as those coordinates weren't changed, which seemed likely in the heat of the moment, then he would be able to find them easily. It was just a matter of the time it would take for space travel, and the time it would take to find a spaceship at all. As far as he knew, he was completely stranded on a random planet. It took months for Brussol to finally earn the credits to buy his own spacecraft. It was practically a hunk of scrap metal, but it could fly, and that's all that mattered. While he was obviously saddened by the loss of his brethren and home world, it wasn't all too much of a tragedy for Brussol in particular, as long as his friends survived the ambush. Brussol had no family to call his own, and no one else in the Saiyan race liked him at all. Rather, he was often the subject of ridicule among other Saiyans, and while he enjoyed fighting, he didn't enjoy conquering worlds and driving out its inhabitants so a tyrannical higher power could put them up for sale. So a Saiyan's lifestyle and occupation also didn't sit well with him either. This whole thing seemed like a blessing in disguise. If Brussol could find his allies, this could be a fresh start for everyone. A chance to live life to the fullest without fear of subjugation, or an obligation to cause harm to others. It's as Brussol always says, here's to a brighter tomorrow. And this new potential future seemed very bright indeed. Brussol knew he could use the coordinates to find the planet where his friends had landed, but figured they had since moved from planet to planet in an attempt to find a new place to call home. With his quick thinking, Brussol tapped into his scouter in order to hone in on his friends by triangulating their scouter's current coordinates. Brussol got what he needed, and was more than ready to give his old buddies the surprise of their lives. He took off toward the direction of their scouters, and ended up at a small planet called Karim. But before Brussol could even introduce himself to the locals, he was met with terrified screams that brought back horrific memories. It was just like his death day. Innocent civilians crying out in terror and fear, pointing at the sky that was being lit ablaze in violent bursts of deadly energy. Only this time, the attack was much more direct. Quick as a flash, someone was darting around in the air, razing down building after building in dazzling flashes of blinding light. A crowd of panicked alien beings scattered in different directions as Brussol struggled to come to grips with what was happening. Until he finally saw them off in the distance. Mizuna and Parsa. He cried out to them as he made a beeline for their location, but just as they turned around, the attacker blitzed directly behind Mizuna and thrust his palm right through her stomach, while simultaneously incinerating Parsa's face with his free hand in a hellishly heated blast, leaving him decapitated as his lifeless corpse collapsed to the ground. The way it happened. So callous, so ruthless. Brussol was inches away from Mizuna when she was struck. Her blood splattered all over him. as he stared in mute horror into her cold, dead eyes. Her expression one of shock and pain, with eyes wide and mouth agape. Still stuck to the attacker's hand, the monster shook her off with one swift motion, and grinded his heel into her face, twisting it into the dirt. Tears streaming down his cheeks, Brussol felt something inside of him twinge, and then bend, until finally, it snapped. In a blind fury unlike anything he's ever experienced before, Brussol lunged himself at the attacker, intent on killing him with his bare hands. But the attacker dodged every strike and kicked Brussol into a rock formation before launching yet another deadly blast directly at him at a breakneck speed. Brussol was completely outmatched, and the tragic thing is, he knew it all too well. He fought in vain, and knew he would die if he kept it up any longer. But the rational thinking he once relied on has gone out the window, and given way to pure fighting instincts and rage-filled devastation. Brussol lost this fight before it even began. The attacker stared him down from behind his cold metal mask, and his next response was to bend down and grab Mizuna's corpse by the throat. With his vision blurred by tears, Brussol could feel a pumping sensation welling up inside of him. It seemed like his battle aura had gone a few shades of gold for a second, as did his hair, but perhaps it was just his imagination. The poor guy couldn't even process all of the emotions raging inside his head at that moment, when suddenly, the masked attacker, the masked Saiyan, had crushed Mizuna's throat in his bare hand. Brussol's surge of unshakable power waned after that, before it dissolved completely, and Brussol collapsed to the ground on his knees, before the assailant who had taken the lives of everyone who had true meaning to him. Leaving Brussol to wallow in his own misery and the loss of his friends, the masked Saiyan teleported away in high-speed movement invisible to the naked eye, and Brussol's entire world came crashing down around him. He was forever changed. That light-hearted demeanor, the life he cherished and the lives of others that he once respected, it all began to sink into darkness. And the worst part of all is that even now, he still has no idea who made his life pure, unadulterated hell that fateful day. All he knows about the attacker is that it was a man, someone in a futuristic set of Saiyan armor and wearing an unusual mask, with wild, untamed black hair visible at the top, complete with bangs covering his forehead. A well-built, strong male, someone who had clearly seen more than his share of battles over the years, and who possessed great power, the likes of which Brussol had never seen. As a result, Brussol goes on living in the memory of those who have fallen, but will never give up on his quest to avenge his friends who were so mercilessly murdered by that masked Saiyan. To this day, he has no idea who to trust. It had been years since that encounter, but the memory is forever burned into his mind. Anyone with black hair is a suspect. Any male at all is someone to watch out for. And since this enemy was anonymous, there's no telling whether or not he had a female accomplice on his side. His life in shambles, Brussol now lives in a universe where there is no one he can trust but himself. Where does Brussol go from here? Stay tuned and find out in my upcoming playthrough of Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2. Coming soon. I hope to see you all there. Until then, take care.